Welcome to the Inspiring Tech Leaders podcast with me, Dave Roberts. Today we're tackling the topic of tariffs, which is making headlines and stirring debates across the world. I want to explore what the impact of global tariffs will have on the technology sector. Before we dive in, I want to emphasize something important. The information we're discussing today is incredibly fluid. Tariff news seems to change by the day, sometimes even by the hour, making this an ambitious podcast to create with so much in flux. What was true yesterday might be different tomorrow, so consider this as a snapshot of where things stand as of the 13th of April 2025. In today's episode, we're examining one of the most pressing challenges facing technology companies and IT leaders right now, the impact of the new US tariffs on technology costs, and the strategies needed to navigate this evolving landscape. I'll explore how the US-China trade war could reshape IT budgets, global supply chains, and strategic decision-making. Let's get started by setting the scene and understanding the current tariff landscape. On the 5th of April, the Trump administration implemented a sweeping tariff policy, imposing a minimum 145% tariff on Chinese goods imported into the US. This is part of a broader strategy to pressure Beijing on trade practices, but it has very real implications for the technology industry. The White House clarified on Thursday that the US tariffs on Chinese imports are now at least 145%, not the 125% that President Trump had initially stated. This tariff is actually layered on top of a combination of earlier tariffs imposed in February and March, bringing the total to 145%. Now here's where things get interesting. Just this past Friday, the US administration announced that certain products like smartphones, computer monitors, and various electronic parts are now exempt from these steep tariffs. This exemption applies to products entering the US or removed from warehouses starting the 5th of April. Analysts have called this tariff exclusion the best news possible for tech investors, noting that big tech firms like Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, and the broader tech industry can breathe a huge sigh of relief this weekend into Monday. But this relief comes with a caveat. The baseline 10% tariff that went into effect on the 5th of April remains in place for all affected imports into the US, and the exemption is only a temporary buffer. It is believed that Apple relies on China for about 90% of its iPhone production. Once the inventory runs out, unless something changes, we could see significant price impacts. China predictably has responded forcefully. On Friday, Beijing retaliated by raising its levies on US goods to 125% from 84%, effective the very next day. This tit-for-tat escalation is further stirring investment sentiment and shaking confidence across global markets. Despite a 90-day pause on the steep Liberation Day tariffs, tensions remain high. Interestingly, Beijing hinted it may not pursue further hikes even if Washington does. Is this a sign of strategy or restraint? Only time will tell. The scale of these tariffs is unprecedented. These are not just affecting niche products, but they are poised to ripple across the entire IT ecosystem. And it's not just about hardware costs. The effects will hit software, services, cloud, and even AI ambitions. This is not the first time tariffs have disrupted the tech industry, but the scale this time is truly remarkable. Let's dive deeper into how these tariffs are affecting hardware and manufacturing in the technology sector. The tech industry, deeply entwined with global supply chains, is experiencing significant shifts due to these tariffs. Take, for instance, the semiconductor industry. Semiconductors are the backbone of modern electronics found in everything from smartphones to automobiles. The recent tariff situation has led companies like Apple, Nvidia, and Tesla to reassess their supply chains. While the current exemptions provide temporary relief, the underlying uncertainty remains a major concern for chip manufacturers and the companies that depend on them. As mentioned, Apple faces particularly complex challenges with its production dependency on China. The White House has been urging Apple to shift iPhone production to the US, but CEO Tim Cook has highlighted a significant obstacle with the lack of sufficiently skilled labor force domestically to support such a move. This is not just an Apple problem. Most global electronics brands heavily rely on Chinese manufacturing and assembly. Even with efforts to diversify to places like India and Vietnam, these shifts are not happening fast enough to avoid short-term disruption. The supply chain disruptions inevitably trickle down to consumers and enterprise buyers. The Consumer Technology Association warns that tariffs could lead to significant price increases. Without the recent exemption, the result could be up to a 45% increase in the cost of laptops and tablet computers. For enterprise buyers, IT departments and procurement teams managing large device refresh cycles, these potential price increases create difficult decisions. Should businesses buy inventory now before potential price spikes, delay device replacements, or completely rethink the sourcing strategies? This is a particular challenge for organizations planning Windows 11 migrations ahead of Windows 10 end of support in October. Options include delaying refresh cycles, investing in extended support for Windows 10, or considering operational expenditure models like device as a service, although these costs will likely rise too. An unintended consequence of these tariffs is the potential acceleration of automation. Facing higher labor costs and production expenses, companies might invest more in AI and robotics to maintain profitability. While this could enhance efficiency, it raises concerns about job displacement and the future landscape of employment in manufacturing. Now let's look beyond hardware to understand how these tariffs are affecting the broader technology ecosystem. While hardware costs are a potential concern, the effects extend far beyond physical devices. Let's explore how the broader technology ecosystem is being affected. Even services like cloud computing and software as a service could see indirect price increases. Cloud providers operate massive data centers filled with servers, storage, and networking equipment. All hardware could be subject to tariffs, meaning as their infrastructure costs rise, these providers will likely pass these increases onto their customers. This creates a challenging situation for companies that have been aggressively moving to cloud-based services to reduce capital expenditures. The operational expenditure model of cloud computing was supposed to provide more predictable costs, but tariff-induced price hikes could disrupt those financial models. For SaaS providers, the situation is equally complex. If retaliatory tariffs hit US-based service providers, European and Asian markets may impose barriers, thereby limiting choice and potentially raising prices for businesses worldwide. We are already seeing early signs of this as countries consider digital service taxes and data sovereignty requirements in response to trade tensions. Infrastructure investments are also under pressure. With servers, storage, and network equipment facing higher tariffs, IT leaders are being forced to ruthlessly prioritize infrastructure investments. Many organizations are finding they need to protect their AI ambitions at the expense of other projects, creating difficult trade-offs between innovation and maintenance. There is also another layer to this, which is the chip supply chain. The US CHIPS Act aims to boost domestic semiconductor manufacturing, but those facilities won't be online until 2027. In the meantime, restrictions on European chip-making equipment exports, particularly from companies like ASML, could further squeeze global supply. This has profound implications for AI development and deployment. AI projects depend on access to GPUs and specialist chips, meaning IT leaders must plan for increased costs and potential delays in AI deployments. Companies that have made significant investments in AI strategies may need to recalibrate their timelines and budgets. Vendors are also getting creative with how they pass on costs. Do not be surprised if you see tariff surcharges added to existing contracts, even for services seemingly unrelated to hardware or imports. We saw this in the US-China trade war in 2018-2019, and it is a tried and tested playbook that is already re-emerging. The impact on global talent mobility should not be overlooked either. As trade tensions rise, visa restrictions often follow, making it harder for tech companies to recruit and retain international talent. This comes at a time when specialized skills in areas like AI, cybersecurity, and advanced manufacturing are already in short supply. Let's now focus on action steps that technology stakeholders can take, regardless of which scenario ultimately unfolds. These strategies will help you navigate the current uncertainty while positioning your organization for long-term success. First, audit your supply chains. It is essential to understand exactly where your hardware is coming from and how it might be affected by current and future tariffs. This is not just about your direct purchases, but also visibility into your supplier's supply chain. Map out your entire technology supply chain, identifying potential vulnerabilities and single points of failure. Second, reassess your procurement timelines. If price hikes seem inevitable for certain technologies, consider front-loading purchases. This is particularly relevant for organizations planning major hardware refreshes in the next 6 to 12 months. However, balance this against the risk of overbuying or purchasing technology that might start depreciating sooner than expected. Third, build contingency into your budgets. Technology leaders should be scenario planning for potential 15 to 20% cost increases across their hardware portfolios. This might mean identifying potential areas for cuts or exploring alternative finance models like as a service or perhaps leasing options. Fourth, diversify your supply networks. The days of single source procurement strategies are over in this new era of trade uncertainty. Develop relationships with multiple vendors across different geographies to reduce your exposure to any single trade dispute. Fifth, invest in AI-driven logistics and supply chain management. Companies with advanced analytics capabilities are better positioned to anticipate disruptions and respond quickly. These tools can help you optimize inventory levels, identify alternative sourcing options, and model the impact of different tariff scenarios. Finally, monitor political signals closely. These tariffs are as much about politics as economics. Stay tuned to developments in Washington and Beijing, as policy shifts can happen rapidly. Consider establishing a cross-functional team to track trade developments and translate them into actionable business intelligence for your organization. Remember that this trade war is not just a geopolitical chess match, it is a technology strategy challenge. How you respond could determine your budget flexibility, supply continuity, and competitive edge over the next 12 to 24 months. The next few courses will challenge technology leaders like never before. Rising costs, supply chain disruptions, and geopolitical uncertainty will test your leadership, strategy, and resilience. But with scenario planning and smart prioritization, you can not only weather the storm, you can position your organization for long-term success. It is worth emphasizing again that this tariff situation remains incredibly fluid. What we have discussed today represents the landscape as of the 13th of April 2025. By the time you're listening to this, new developments may have emerged. This underscores the importance of staying vigilant, maintaining flexibility in your planning, and building resilience into your technology strategy. Remember that while tariffs create challenges, they also present opportunities for innovation and strategic differentiation. Organizations that navigate these waters successfully will emerge stronger, more agile, and better positioned for the future. Well, that's all for today's episode, but what do you think? Let me know your thoughts. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Inspiring Tech Leaders podcast, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in tech.